Have you ever been in that moment where life feels like it's just too much? You're trying to carry responsibilities, expectations, disappointments, and it all piles up so high that you feel like you can't even see over the top of it. Maybe it's bills stacking higher than your paycheck. Maybe it's deadlines closing in faster than your energy can keep up. Maybe it's the weight of grief or fear or insecurity pressing down so hard that you can't catch your breath. Overwhelmed. That's the word. Not just busy, not just tired. Overwhelmed. Like waves crashing over your head, one after another, and you're gasping for air, wondering, how long can I keep this up? But let me remind you of something that shifts everything when you feel overwhelmed. Remember who's with you. Because the enemy wants you to believe you're carrying this by yourself, that it's all on your shoulders, that your strength, your wisdom, your resources have to be enough. But if it was only up to you, you'd have sunk a long time ago. The reason you're still standing, even with trembling knees, even with questions in your mind, is because someone has been standing with you the whole time. Think back to the moments you thought would break you, the nights you cried and thought morning would never come, the mistakes you thought disqualified you, the closed doors that crushed your confidence. You didn't make it through because you were strong enough. You made it through because you weren't walking alone. See, the presence of God doesn't always remove the pressure, but it does remind you that pressure doesn't have the final say. You may feel surrounded by stress, but you're also surrounded by His strength. You may feel outnumbered by your problems, but you are never outnumbered when you know who fights for you. And I need you to hear this. Just because you feel overwhelmed doesn't mean you are overcome. The feeling is not the fact. The fear is not the forecast. The chaos is not the conclusion. Because right in the middle of your storm, there is one who speaks peace. Right in the valley of your weakness, there is one whose power is made perfect. So maybe today you walked in here or tuned in, and you're carrying something nobody else sees. Smiling on the outside, suffocating on the inside. But you don't have to fake it or force it. You just have to focus. Focus on who's with you. When the bills are bigger than the paycheck, He's with you. When the diagnosis is darker than the doctor's words, He's with you. When friends walk away and loneliness moves in, He's with you. When your own thoughts turn against you, He's with you. You are not abandoned. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. And sometimes you just need to remind yourself out loud. Sometimes you've got to stand in your living room, in your car, at your desk, and speak it. I am not alone in this. I am not fighting by myself. I am not walking through this valley empty-handed. God is with me. That truth doesn't make the storm less real, but it makes you unshakable in the storm. It doesn't make the pressure disappear, but it gives you power under pressure. When you feel overwhelmed, remember, He's been faithful before, and He will be faithful again. The same one who walked you through yesterday is walking you into tomorrow. And as long as He's with you, overwhelmed doesn't mean defeated. When you feel overwhelmed, it's so easy to assume that being under pressure means you're already defeated. You wake up, and the weight of everything you're facing presses down on your chest before you even get out of bed. Your mind starts racing with everything that went wrong yesterday and everything you fear could go wrong today. In those moments, you tell yourself, I can't do this anymore. I'm finished. But what you need to realize is that feeling overwhelmed is not the same thing as being overcome. There's a difference between the pressure you feel and the outcome that is already secured for you. Think about this. Waves can crash over you. Water can surround you, and you can still keep standing because you know how to swim. You may feel like the storm is too strong, but storms don't mean the ship is sinking. They only mean you're in a fight to hold steady. Just because you feel like you're drowning doesn't mean you are. That feeling is real, but it isn't final. When you feel overwhelmed, the emotions shout at you, the circumstances scream louder, and you believe that this is the end. But the truth is, if you're still standing, if you're still breathing, if you're still fighting, then you are not overcome. There are times when you mistake your exhaustion for defeat. You think that because you're tired, you're losing. You think that because you're worn out, it's over. But fatigue is not failure. Fatigue just means you've been in the fight long enough to need strength that is beyond your own. And that's when you need to remind yourself. The weight you're under doesn't determine whether you win. The outcome isn't decided by how heavy the load feels on your shoulders. The outcome is decided by the one who already overcame. Feelings are temporary, but truth is eternal. You can feel abandoned, but the truth is you are not abandoned. You can feel weak, but the truth is strength is being made perfect in your weakness. You can feel like everything is stacked against you, but the truth is that if God is for you, nothing can ultimately stand against you. That's why it's so important to separate what you feel from what is actually real. Because feelings shout loud in the middle of a storm, but truth stands steady like an anchor. You have to remind yourself of those times you thought you wouldn't make it, but somehow you did. Remember those nights when you thought the pain would consume you, but morning still came. Recall those situations where you thought there was no way out, but here you are today on the other side of them. Those moments prove that overwhelmed is not the same as overcome. The very fact that you survived what tried to take you out shows that you are stronger than you feel. You are held by something greater than your fear. It's easy to confuse pressure with defeat because the pressure feels so intense in the moment. But diamonds are made under pressure. Growth happens under pressure. Transformation takes place when the weight presses down. What looks like it's crushing you could be the very thing shaping you into who you were meant to be. So the presence of pressure is not proof of your defeat. It's often the sign that you're in the middle of something important, something that matters, something that will ultimately reveal the strength that was placed inside you. The truth is, the enemy doesn't waste energy on people who aren't a threat. If you feel overwhelmed, it may be because you're close to breakthrough. If you feel surrounded, it may be because you're standing on the edge of something significant. And if you confuse that feeling with being overcome, you'll step out too soon. But when you remember that overwhelmed is just a feeling, and overcome is a fact, you'll find the courage to keep standing. You may not feel like you're winning, but victory doesn't always feel like victory in the moment. Sometimes victory feels like holding on with shaking hands. Sometimes victory feels like tears running down your face while you still whisper, "I won't give up." Sometimes victory feels like crawling when you thought you'd be running. But make no mistake, as long as you haven't given in, as long as you haven't quit, you are not overcome. So when life presses you down and you feel like the weight is going to crush you, don't confuse the sensation of being overwhelmed with the reality of being overcome. Overwhelmed is a season. Overcome is a conclusion. And the conclusion has already been written long before the pressure arrived. The conclusion declares that you are more than a conqueror, not because of what you feel, but because of the one who already secured the victory on your behalf. When you're carrying more than you thought you could, when you're standing under a weight you never asked for, the pressure feels unbearable. The deadlines, the expectations, the constant comparison to others, the voices in your head telling you you're not enough, it all combines into this crushing force that makes you think you can't go on. But here's the truth that shifts your perspective. God's presence is greater than the pressure. You may feel pressed on every side, but you are not alone in the pressing. The weight may be real, but the presence walking with you is stronger than anything weighing against you. Pressure has a way of convincing you that you're abandoned. It whispers, if God was really with you, it wouldn't be this hard. But that's a lie. Hard doesn't mean absent. Struggle doesn't mean forsaken. Just because you feel pressed doesn't mean you've been left. In fact, some of the clearest encounters with God come in the seasons of greatest pressure. Think about the times you were desperate, the moments you felt like you had nothing left. Those were the very places you discovered strength you didn't know you had. Not because the pressure eased, but because His presence showed up in the middle of it. When the pressure comes, your instinct is often to look for relief. You want the problem gone, the stress removed, the situation fixed. But sometimes the presence of God doesn't take away the pressure. It sustains you under it. It holds you steady while everything around you shakes. It reminds you that you're not standing in your own power, but in His. And that's why you haven't collapsed under the weight yet. Not because you're strong enough, but because His presence is holding you up when your strength runs out. Imagine walking through fire. On your own, the flames would consume you. But when you're not walking alone, the fire might surround you, but it cannot destroy you. That's the reality of God's presence. Always take you around the trial. It often takes you through it, proving to you and everyone watching that there's a greater power at work in your life than the pressure that's against you. You may think the presence of God is something you have to feel, but feelings are unreliable. His presence is not determined by your emotions. It's determined by His promise. And His promise is that He will never leave you or forsake you. So even when you can't sense it, He is there. Even when you don't feel it, He is carrying you. Even when you wonder if you've been forgotten, His hand is holding you together under the weight. Pressure without presence leads to collapse. But pressure with presence leads to strength you didn't know you could have. The presence of God doesn't just lighten the load, it changes how you carry it. It shifts your focus from what you can't handle to who is handling it with you. And when you know He's with you, the pressure that once felt like it was crushing you starts to feel like an opportunity to lean deeper into Him. There are moments when you try to measure your ability against the size of your struggle. You look at the weight you're under and you think, I can't hold this. And you're right. You can, but you don't have to. His presence is your portion. His presence is your strength. His presence is the reason the pressure won't have the final say. Because what looks unbearable on your shoulders is carried effortlessly in His hands. When you stop seeing the pressure as proof of your weakness and start seeing it as an opportunity for His presence to show up, everything changes. Suddenly, the burden that made you want to quit becomes the stage where His strength is revealed. The pressure that looked like it would end you becomes the very place where you discover He is enough. And the harder the weight presses, the closer you cling to Him, the more you realize that nothing can separate you from His presence. It's in those seasons of pressure that you learn the greatest lessons. You learn that peace doesn't come from the absence of problems, but from the presence of God. You learn that strength doesn't come from avoiding the weight, but from leaning on the one who carries it with you. You learn that joy doesn't come from everything going right, but from knowing you're not going through it alone. And you learn that even when life puts you in a corner, His presence fills the room. The enemy wants the pressure to push you into isolation, to make you believe you've been left to fend for yourself. But the truth is, you've never fought a single battle alone. Every sleepless night, He was with you every tear you cried, He was near. Overwhelming wave that threatened to pull you under, He was the hand holding you above the surface. The pressure was real, but His presence was greater. When you look back over your life, there are moments you thought you wouldn't make it through. You remember the heartbreak that felt like it would break you in half. You remember the financial stress that kept you awake night after night, how you would survive. You remember the rejection, the loss, the fear, the countless battles that seemed bigger than you, and yet here you are. That alone is proof that past faithfulness points to future victory. What carried you through then will carry you through now. The same hand that sustained you before is the same hand that will guide you forward. It's easy to forget when you're in the middle of something overwhelming. Fear has a way of erasing memory. Pressure has a way of making you lose sight of what's already been proven. But if you pause long enough, if you stop and remember, you'll see that time and time again, when you thought you were done, God came through. Maybe it wasn't the way you expected, maybe it wasn't when you expected, but he was faithful. And if he was faithful, then why would he stop now? Sometimes you convince yourself that this situation is different, that this mountain is higher, this storm is stronger, this valley is darker. And maybe it is in some ways. But faithfulness doesn't expire. The same presence that showed up when you were at your lowest will show up again. The same strength that lifted you when you couldn't get back up on your own will lift you again. The same peace that quieted your soul when chaos surrounded you will quiet you again. What you need to do is remind yourself of the record. The track record of God's faithfulness is flawless. Think about the stories that inspire you. They are filled with people who faced impossible odds, but the faithfulness of God carried them through. It wasn't their skill that made the difference. It was his presence. It wasn't their ability to predict the outcome. It was his consistency to show up. And the same faithfulness written in those pages is the same faithfulness that has been written into your story. Every scar on your heart is a testimony that you lived through something that should have ended you. Every closed door that redirected you is proof that there was a greater plan at work. Every time you thought you were stuck, but found a way forward, is evidence that he's never left you stranded. You may not realize it in the moment, but your life is filled with markers of his faithfulness. That job you weren't qualified for but still got. That accident you should have been in but somehow avoided. That breakup that crushed you but saved you from worse pain later. That one phone call, that one opportunity, that one connection that came at just the right time. None of it was random. All of it was faithfulness. And that's what gives you confidence for the future. Victory is not something you're chasing. It's something that's already been promised. You've seen it before and you'll see it again. The same way you look at a sunrise and trust that it will rise tomorrow. You can look at the history of God's faithfulness in your life and trust that he will be faithful tomorrow. The details may be different. The path may not look the same, but the character of God doesn't change. He doesn't wake up one day and decide to leave you on your own. He doesn't change his mind halfway through the journey. If he started it, he will finish it. If he promised it, he will bring it to pass. When fear tells you that this time will be the time you fail, you can silence that lie by remembering the times you didn't. When anxiety tells you that this battle will crush you, you can remind yourself of the battles that didn't. When doubt tells you that the story is over, you can look back at all the chapters you thought were endings that turned out to be beginnings. That's what past faithfulness does. It builds a case for future victory. It doesn't mean you won't feel afraid. It doesn't mean you won't feel overwhelmed. But it does mean you have a foundation under your feet that feelings can't shake. Because no matter what your emotions scream, the evidence of his faithfulness is stronger. And evidence speaks louder than fear. You don't have to invent confidence. You just have to remember. The enemy would love for you to have amnesia. He would love for you to be so focused on what's wrong right now that you forget what went right before. He would love to keep you blinded to the moments where God showed up. Because if you remember those, you'll have hope for what's ahead. That's why the practice of remembering is so powerful. Every time you recall his past faithfulness, you're fueling your future fight. Every time you remind yourself of what he's already done, you're strengthening yourself to believe for what he's about to do. You didn't come this far to be abandoned now. The same God who brought you through yesterday's storm is walking you through today's struggle. The same voice that spoke peace to your panic then is whispering peace now. The same hand that lifted you out of despair before is lifting you again. And every step forward is another testimony in the making. Another story of faithfulness that you'll one day look back on and say, that's how I knew I'd make it through. Stress has a way of surrounding you, creeping in from every side until it feels like there's no space to breathe. Bills surround you. Deadlines surround you. Conflict surrounds you. Insecurity surrounds you. And when all you can see is what's against you, you begin to believe that's all there is. But the truth is, you are not just surrounded by stress, you are surrounded by strength. What you focus on determines how you feel. And if all you focus on are the problems pressing in, you'll miss the presence that's protecting you. There's always more going on than what your eyes can see. You might see the trouble, the worry, the weight, but there is an unseen strength encircling you. And the presence of strength doesn't erase the stress, but it reframes it. Stress may shout the loudest, but strength has the final word. Stress may fill your thoughts, but strength is filling your spirit. You may feel outnumbered, but you've got more with you than against you. The reason you've made it this far is not because stress hasn't been real. It's because strength has been greater. The nights when anxiety was louder than sleep, the days when your schedule felt impossible, the weeks when everything piled up, you didn't quit. You didn't collapse. And it wasn't because stress gave you mercy. It was because strength surrounded you. Strength held you when you couldn't hold yourself. Strength lifted you when you thought you had nothing left. Strength whispered, you can take one more step when you wanted to stay down. The danger of being surrounded by stress is that you start to believe it's the only thing around you. You lose sight of the bigger picture. Stress blinds you. It narrows your vision. It makes you think that what's pressing against you defines you. But strength is just as present, sometimes more present than you realize. And when you shift your focus, when you stop obsessing over the stress and start acknowledging the strength, you find courage to keep moving. Stress surrounds you with questions. What if I fail? What if I can't provide? What if people don't accept me? But strength surrounds you with answers. You've overcome before. You're not walking alone. You are more resilient than you realize. Stress surrounds you with noise. Strength surrounds you with peace. Stress surrounds you with lies. Strength surrounds you with truth. It takes intentional vision to see it. If you only rely on what your natural eyes can take in, all you'll notice is the chaos closing in. But if you step back and open your perspective, you'll begin to recognize that even in the most stressful seasons, you were never left exposed. There was always strength reinforcing you. There was always a presence sustaining you. That's why you're still here. Stress has tried to take you out, but strength has kept you in. Think about the last battle you fought. In the middle of it, it felt like stress had the upper hand. It felt like everything was stacked against you. But when you look back now, you can see how strength carried you through. You can see how, while you were panicking, strength was protecting. While you were doubting, strength was defending. While you were ready to give up, strength was building something in you that stress couldn't break. What surrounds you doesn't have to determine what sustains you. You don't get to choose whether stress comes, but you do get to choose whether you believe that stress is all there is. And the truth is, it's not. You are not encircled by weakness. You are encircled by strength. It's in the unseen, but it's real. And sometimes the greatest thing you can do when you feel hemmed in by stress is to remind yourself of what you can't see, to speak it until you believe it, to declare out loud that stress may be near, but strength is nearer. That's why you didn't lose your mind when the pressure mounted. That's why you didn't walk away when the weight was crushing. That's why you didn't give up when the path was blocked, because there was strength surrounding you, holding you steady in ways you couldn't even explain. You thought you were standing by your own power, but there was more with you than what was against you. Every time stress pushes in, strength pushes back harder. Every time fear surrounds you, courage rises stronger. Every time doubt floods your mind, truth comes rushing in. You may feel outnumbered, but you've got unseen reinforcement on your side. And that reinforcement never runs out, never weakens, never leaves you stranded. Stress surrounds your life with pressure. but strength surrounds your soul with power. And that power is why you're still here, still fighting, still standing, still moving forward, even when everything in you wanted to stop. When the noise in your head gets louder than the truth in your heart, you have a choice to make. Do you believe every thought that enters your mind? Or do you speak back to it with what you know is true? Because fear speaks, doubt speaks, stress speaks. But you don't have to sit in silence and let those lies dictate your direction. You've been given a voice for a reason. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in the middle of being overwhelmed is to speak the truth out loud, to declare what's real even when you don't feel it. Lies have power when you let them stay hidden. They multiply in the shadows. They grow when you leave them unchallenged. A thought that starts as a whisper can quickly become a prison if you never confront it. That's why you can't just let the lies run free in your mind. You have to take them captive. You have to answer them. When fear tells you you're not enough, speak truth. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. When doubt says you can't make it, speak truth. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. When shame says your past defines you, speak truth. You are a new creation, forgiven and free. Your voice is a weapon, and the enemy knows it, which is why he wants to keep you quiet. He wants you to think that speaking truth is pointless, that nothing will change. But something shifts when you open your mouth and declare what's real. It doesn't mean your circumstances instantly change, but your spirit does. Fear loses its grip when you name and encounter it. Anxiety begins to loosen when you confront it with truth. Lies lose their hold when you drag them into the light and refuse to let them stand unopposed. Think about how much of your stress is fueled by the stories you tell yourself. I'll never be good enough. I'll never get out of this. I'll always be stuck. Those stories sound convincing because you've rehearsed them.